Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this webinar called As a Service with Purpose. I am Alain Malbeuf, sales specialist at NOVIPRO. I've been working with NOVIPRO for the last 5 years. Before being a sales specialist, I used to be this solution designer architect for infrastructure. And before that, I used to be myself a customer, working as in the technical side of the IT infrastructures as system admin up to infrastructure director. So I am hosting this webinar today with Anthony Nornabel, Canadian Sales Director for GreenLake Cloud Services at HPE. Hi, Anthony. How are you today?
Very well, Alain. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Temperature is well, it's so-so, but I mean, we're having a webinar, so we're inside, so that's fine.
It'll work.
So just before we begin, if anyone attending today would like to ask a question, you can do so using the chat option or button that you'll have on your screen. We'll try to answer your question at the end of the presentation, but feel free to send them whenever you want to during this presentation. So Anthony, as a service with purpose, what is this title about?
Yes, great. Thanks, Alain, for having me today. And I'll just recap that GreenLake Cloud Services, as Alain mentioned, I lead the GreenLake Cloud Services business for HPE Canada. And some of you may be familiar, some not, with the term GreenLake. And for HPE, GreenLake is our branding for our as a service business. Effectively, it's our cloud practice, as the title says. So when we're talking about as a service with purpose, we're really talking about the cloud experience. And I'll just dive into the presentation now, Alain, but when we're talking about cloud services at HPE, oftentimes customers are kind of curious as to, long-standing OEM, manufacturer, engineering company, what are you talking about when you talk about cloud? And are you just applying the term cloud to your business because it's an exciting space for our customers these days? But what I wanted to talk about is the focus that we've had as an organization for really the past decade, a little bit more than a decade now, to solve this problem that you see on the screen, which is customers who are looking at that cloud experience maybe moving some of their workloads, applications, and data to the cloud to take advantage of those features and benefits. But what we're focused on is we're not in competition with the hyperscalers and that cloud solution, but we do recognize that within our customers today, not everything is applicable to a hyperscale solution. And so what we're focused on is making sure that when a cloud decision is made and something needs to remain on-prem as an example, that experience isn't lost, that we're able to provide and help our customers maintain the features and benefits and functions of that as a service business in a cloud experience. But for those workloads, applications, and data that just might not be a good fit in that hyperscale solution for some of the reasons that you'll see on the screen there with respect to data, gravity, latency, and application dependencies. But if we take a look deeper into that cloud experience, what are we really talking about? And you'll see that you've got some high-level business functions that are focused on helping customers align their costs with usage. Of course, that makes the business much more efficient. Customers are looking to have that scale up and scale down feature of that hyperscale solution, meaning they're able to respond to the business demands. And they're also able to respond to new demands quickly, giving them that agility and speed, which is that burst ability you hear about in the cloud so often. So we're looking at kind of maintaining that. How do you continue that experience in that on-prem model? Automation is another key component. When you look at the tools that customers are using in the hyperscalers as an example, whether it's AI related or otherwise, there's quite often a tool set that allows them to focus on the business at hand and not so much the underlying components that facilitate the business. And that's a key feature, and I think it's also one that we can talk to a little bit deeper when we're talking about managed services and the experience customers are looking for. Cost optimization, of course, that's key. As we're all trying to figure out the changing dynamics of the economy ongoing, you want to be able to have some predictability in your business. You want to be able to make some decisions, and you want to have the visibility to understand what's happening with your business unit's use of the technology. And again, make sure to the first point, you've got those alignment, the costs aligned directly with that usage. And so if we look at sort of where we're at today for most customers, we're kind of seeing 70% of the requirement is still in that on-prem or co-located environment, and 30% is really where we're sort of seeing the use of that hyperscale, whether it's Azure, AWS, Google, or otherwise. So you're kind of seeing that there is a real relevance to being able to have that cloud experience for those applications, workloads, and data that are going to remain on-prem for whatever the reason might be. And so for HPE, this is really what we've been focused on, as I said, for just about over a decade now, which is being able to take all of the features and functions of that cloud experience and allow them to be maintained in that on-prem or co-located environment. For HPE, we don't really have any preference one way or the other, depending on where your objectives for your business are. Some customers are really talking about getting out of that data center experience altogether because it's not a core capability that they have, nor do they want to have that core capability within their organization. So they effectively outsource that to the co-located providers in Canada. So being able to have all of those rich features we talked about in the cloud experience, but allowing them to be in that on-prem or co-located solution. And I think one of the key components on this slide that we want to dig into a little bit deeper, Alain, is the managed services. Because of course, if you're going to a hyperscaler, you don't need to concern yourself with the underlying care and feeding, as they say, of the infrastructure that's supporting your business. You don't have to be concerned with updating firmware or patching or monitoring. That's all taken care of by the hyperscaler. So maybe we'll just talk about how NOVIPRO can help extend that managed service experience for customers leveraging GreenLake.
Exactly. Thanks, Anthony. As we've seen on your previous slide, and you mentioned, there's the GreenLake offer a catalog of service that might be delivered by you, HPE, or by your partner like us, NOVIPRO. So at NOVIPRO, we've been running managed services for our customer for several years now. We're mainly focused on infrastructure, but our offering has increased over the year and is still growing. In today's world, most businesses can't afford downtimes. In fact, most of the processes require data, systems, and application, and without them, businesses cannot run, take decisions, or they will do so with great difficulty. So go back 10, 15 years ago, and this dependency to those systems and data were certainly not as high as it is today. So don't get me wrong here. Those systems are there to achieve a better efficiency in the businesses, and this is where many of them want their employee, the business want their employee to focus on where their core businesses is. So they will leave the infrastructure management to some service provider like us. So NOVIPRO managed service can support partially, completely the customer environment to ensure the availability of servers, personal workplace, databases, storage, backup, all of this, including network and also security. So this is done through monitoring and maintenance on the system, which is tailored on the customer needs. Yeah, so we're really defining the providing what really makes sense for the customer, not too much, not too little. So
yep, gotta find that right balance.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, you get your data will remain on Canadian soil. Well, that's funny, Canadian. I mean, we're talking about cloud data on Canadian soil, but anyway, you get that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a key component. I think a really interesting area of focus that I've seen a shift in the last couple of years in particular in conversations with clients about a risk profile, and with workforce being much more mobile now, in order to attract top talent, a lot of organizations are, to your point, looking to hire individuals for the roles that are going to be key revenue generating for their business. Yep. And so this idea of effectively out-tasking, where to your point, you kind of pick that delineation point in the list of activities you'd like managed. You can now see with a GreenLake service, which I'll talk about in a little more detail in a second, you can see if you're aligning your costs with usage, you have a dynamic environment that's able to grow as the business needs change, and then you wrap around it that managed service or out-tasking component, you can start to see how the business can really take advantage of the security of having NOVIPRO being responsible for the underlying care and feeding and management and monitoring of the infrastructure so the business can focus on what it does best.
Exactly. Our recipe for success comes also from our process, including personalized solution, professional team dedicated to the customer, and we're able to guarantee that data security because we're under a SOC 2 type 2 control also. So yeah, I think customer can see the experience we have through managed services and how this makes sense in a GreenLake with a GreenLake offering for them. So let's continue with GreenLake, but keep in mind that NOVIPRO managed service can definitely help in this offering.
Absolutely. So with GreenLake, the term GreenLake, it's been around for about 5 years now as a brand for our as-a-service practice at HPE, and it's really kind of grown from its early days, which some of your customers may have been familiar with, a solution we had called Flexible Capacity, and it was very infrastructure as a service focused. What you're seeing now from HPE is this is really GreenLake on a slide. You're really able to see the edge to cloud platform as a service take shape, where all of the components that are required for customers that may be considering whether it's compute or storage or networking, all of the services and what HPE delivers is available as a service now. And so you can see we've got it bookended with our advisory services, which is the consulting practice, which with NOVIPRO's help can help customers figure out, well, what is our journey going to look like? What is that balance? You saw 70-30 earlier. Maybe that's not the mix that works best for each organization. So figuring out how to find that right balance. And then on the left side, you can see the security and the compliance component, which are core to what a lot of customers are focusing on these days. But if we dig a little bit deeper into GreenLake and how does it effectively work, the front end of any engagement with a client, as mentioned earlier, starts with an assessment, understanding what the needs of the business are. And you can see, if you look on the left-hand side of the diagram, really making sure that we understand what the needs are of the business. For generally, we look at the next 3 to 6 months, and that's the bar that you see on the green bar on the left-hand side. If you look to the center and the month 1, what we do is we deploy not only what's required from an infrastructure technology area with the green bar, we're adding on top of that the lighter green bar, which is variable capacity. So we have reserved capacity, which is the green bar, and then the variable capacity, which is the light blue bar. That's all installed at your data center or in a co-located environment, but you're only paying for what you use. So the reserved amount is a fixed amount each month that you understand that's the floor. That's where you're going to pay each month. But if the right sizing activity has been done correctly at the front end, it's a value you'll understand and a value you'll recognize for the business. And it's the variable capacity that's installed upfront, available to you in co-located or your own data center, that's giving you that burstability, right? So you're able to, as the needs of the business change, you can burst into the capacity that's the lighter blue, and you're only paying for what you use in that variable capacity. This is metered monthly, so that's a component of the secret sauce that we have, is our ability to meter the technology and its use, whether it's the compute side, compute and storage in a hyper-converged solution. We're able to meter that usage each month and generate an invoice, which is, again, as you heard earlier in that cloud experience, where your costs have now been completely aligned with your actual usage. And so in that front end assessment, some of the things that we'll focus on, well, what's the size of that variable capacity that's needed? We have a few flavors. Most often I'll see 80-20. 80% of the installed infrastructure is in that reserved, 20% is variable. We can do 60-40, 70-30. There's a few flavors, but again, based on the needs that you have and what you think your growth trajectory might be, or how unpredictable is it. In some cases, we see 70-30 is a nice landing zone for a storage requirement because data is just growing so quickly. And as data governance policies are being refined, how long do you need to retain it? Where's the best place to retain it? You can see how having a dynamic or variable environment would help with the business greatly. And so because we're metering that technology each month, there's a couple of things that will happen. One, of course, your costs are aligned with usage, but also over time, the analytics will kick in. So you'll start to see some capacity planning. And I'll touch on that when we talk about the GreenLake Cloud Platform in just a little bit. But you can start to see how, okay, well, now you're starting to use the environment. You're generating some information and data about how you're using the environment. You're going to be able to see some projected costs. So you also be capacity planning, so you know when a change request is required, which is how we increase the capacity. So you can see there by the end of the term in this very simplified example, you're obviously not going to be in the same state you were at the front end. Our contracts, I should mention, are 3, 4, and 5 years in length. So during that term, whichever makes the most sense for you and your business, you're going to see change requests which are initiated to replenish the variable capacity as your reserved requirement grows over the term of the contract. So you can see how, just as we spoke about the managed services, you can take care of managing this infrastructure if that's the design that you'd like, or you can have NOVIPRO take it on with some balance of HPE or strictly NOVIPRO. You're also seeing that your growth is managed through the term of the crop. Not only will you have access to see what the growth trajectory is, there's also a team that's available to work as your needs might be changing. So capacity planning is one thing based on trajectory that we can see, but the other is if you have a business need that's coming down the line, you can initiate a change request at any point through the process of the agreement, or the term of the agreement rather, and have that infrastructure available to you and installed before it's needed for the business. So you can have that capacity ahead of demand. I do mention with the measurement, we will do that with unit of measure. And so just quickly looking at what is factored into a unit of measure, you can see on the right-hand side how we meter our technology. So storage is quite simple. It's in fact all metered based on usable gigabytes. In our compute space, there's a few different flavors per server, per core. A compute unit is a calculation of virtual memory. So when you have a hyper-converged solution as an example, we're also able to meter by per VM and per container. And there's a little footnote in the bottom of that box which speaks to pay bands. We like to have the pay bands defined in the agreement up front, and what that provides our clients is predictability of their costs over the term. So you can see it's a P times Q exercise based on your usage or even your projected usage if you're doing some budget planning. You can see very clearly in your agreement with NOVIPRO that there is defined pay bands, and so there's usually 1 through 5 pay bands. What each pay band represents is as your environment grows over the term of the contract, your unit of measure, and we'll speak about storage because it's quite simple, your unit of measure being usable gigabytes. As you're consuming more gigabytes in the environment, you'll clearly see that when you hit a different pay band or a different range of storage capacity, your price per unit of measure will drop. So for example, if it were 5 cents per gigabyte in pay band 1, pay band 2 might be 4.5, pay band 3 might be 4 cents. So you can see how the economies of scale will kick in through the term of the contract. So not only do you have predictable costs, you also have decreasing costs as your usage grows. And that's not just for the gigabytes going forward that you're using, it's for everything that's in the environment up until that point. The next invoice, you'll see that all of the usable gigabytes in the environment will now be billed at that lower predictable price per gigabyte. And so on the left hand,
sorry, Anthony, which is very good for the customer, in fact. And as you were saying, the pay bands are defined upfront at the signature of the contract, but it is also defined based on, the number of pay bands that will be there is defined also on the customer needs, right? So it's an exercise we do with the customer.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. And that right sizing exercise at the front end will do a lot of things. One being, of course, define what the needs are, but also be a point of inputs for the decisions around variable capacity, number of pay bands. You'll start to see all that come together. And again, that's happening through the discussions at the front end of the contract and applicable through the term of the agreement.
Yes.
So you can see on the left-hand side all of the components that are included. So you'll have, of course, you'll have your infrastructure, the associated services. You'll have some defined account team members, the account support manager, which is focused on the delivery side and would work with NOVIPRO around availability and making sure that the environment is stable. You've also got a capacity planning component where you're going to have direct feedback from HPE related to any alerts that we're seeing in the system based on usage. You'll also have the ability to look at the billing going forward. You have any questions, there's a defined team that's available to help you. That's also the team that you would engage with alongside NOVIPRO as a change request is required. So as we're starting to see usage creep in, and in the example of 80-20, 80% reserved and 20% variable, maybe we mutually agree that as you hit 89%, there's a forced conversation where we get together and we say, is this a sustained usage of the platform where we should initiate a change request to replenish the variable? Or is this something that's only short term and you're expecting to roll back? because HPE will not initiate a change request without a customer's approval. You won't have infrastructure showing up without your authorization or clear understanding. It's all about the control that you have to determine that contract as to how it grows. So I mentioned earlier that our origin story with consumption was really infrastructure as a service based. The flexible capacity that some of you may have been familiar with. It really had a lot of those core features and functions around paying for only what you're using and an adaptable environment that grows with your needs as they change over time. This has really been the focus for HPE, which is the GreenLake Cloud Platform. So this is the single point of entry for our customers to all of our services associated with GreenLake. And our brand associated to GreenLake, it can be what we've discussed right now, which is the as a service practice. It also can be the components of InfoSight. For example, for those of you who may be leveraging HPE technology today, if you're using InfoSight, that is a component that's available for you to access through the GreenLake Cloud Platform. Ultimately, this is where you'll engage with the tools that you may have procured or included in the solution, whether they're provisioning tools allowing you to provision dynamically the environment, spin up VMs, spin down VMs, or it could just be the capacity planning components, which I'll talk to a little bit further in a bit, or it could be the data cloud console or compute ops manager. All of the solutions that HPE is creating that are aligned with our GreenLake practice are available to you through the GreenLake Cloud Platform. There's ways for you to work with NOVIPRO to have a demonstration of the GreenLake Cloud Platform, but ultimately what you're seeing when you log in are the 4 pillars that I just mentioned. Aruba Central is an anchor that some of you may be leveraging for your networking components today. That is now available in the GreenLake Cloud Platform, as are our data services cloud console, compute ops manager, and the one I want to zero in a little bit more on, which is the HPE GreenLake Central. So as I mentioned, we're metering the environment for usage. Monthly bills are generated based on that usage. As you're dipping into the variable capacity throughout the month, your usage will be metered, measured. And so what that's driving is analytics. It's giving you not only visibility into what's happening in the use of the environment, but it's also giving you really important and valuable information to either potentially curb behavior in the environment if there's an organization or a business unit within your team that's using the infrastructure for something that was intended to be 6 weeks or had a specific budget threshold. You're now able to set those budgets inside the GreenLake Cloud Platform through GreenLake Central. Again, whether it's a time-based budget or whether it's a dollar-based budget, you're going to have a dashboard that's giving you that green, yellow, red view into your organization's use of the infrastructure. And so whether that's to be able to control a specific project or whether it's just to provide bill back or show back information to business units, you're now starting to get data which you can leverage to action insights inside your organization to change the outcome. An important component to remember with HPE GreenLake, as I mentioned, we definitely understand the importance of that hyperscale view and hyperscale solution for your business. So with HPE GreenLake Central, you can insert your hyperscale credentials, be it Google, Azure, or AWS, and you can apply the same logic, the same view, the same visibility, the same control to your hyperscale usage all through the GreenLake dashboard. So you can see how you're able to control not only the GreenLake estate, but also your instances in Azure, AWS, or Google, again, to provide you with that control, capacity planning, and optimization. This is also where you would trigger, if you chose to trigger a change request, you can also do it through the platform, which would engage NOVIPRO and HPE to begin the discussion to deploy more infrastructure for you. So we like to talk at a high level about some of the business value, again, that's brought to bear with GreenLake and that as a service or cloud experience. And so the natural one you can see right there off the start is preserved cash. Maybe 6 years ago, we were talking to customers about preserving cash or managing cash flow for innovation. Of course, through the pandemic, it became a much different conversation around how to use cash more effectively. Customers were still requiring that innovation agenda. They still needed to figure out how their business was going to flow through the pandemic. And so they needed to be very particular about where their capital dollars were being utilized. And so obviously, if you're not buying a large tranche of infrastructure as you may have done in the past and then grown into it, you're seeing how you're just aligning your costs with usage. There's no upfront payment required within GreenLake. The first invoice from NOVIPRO related to the GreenLake environment will be for that first month's usage. As you can see how without the large capital outlay up front, you can start to talk to your finance teams about how to use the capital dollars a bit differently. A quicker time to market, that's a pretty transparent one, just insofar as if you have the access to that variable capacity as a business need presents itself, there isn't a procurement cycle, historical procurement cycle that might kick in that allows for an evaluation of the business case, procurement of the infrastructure, lead times, installation, and then you might be ready. Because the variable capacity is installed and available day one, you can use it right away. And as I mentioned, as you work with NOVIPRO to right-size that variable capacity, you could have as much as 40% of the environment sitting available to you to grow and burst into. Again, it really just depends on the needs of your business, the growth trajectory, how unpredictable is it, and how could that variable capacity solve. We talked a little bit about, from a budgeting standpoint, of course, having the predictability of the costs and the pay bands we spoke about. As you're doing those projections or budget approvals, it's very easy to have a project presented to the finance team and for review, and they can say, well, what would this cost us? And you can quickly look at the GreenLake Central Cloud Platform, see where you are in the pay bands, what's the size requirement, do you have that available in the variable capacity? If so, could you just start to take advantage of that right away and just spin up the infrastructure and your next invoice is adjusted? Or is it a larger project that you need to have ordered through change request, deployed, installed before the need arises? But all of that happens with the predictability of knowing, again, in the storage example, what's the price per usable gigabyte? How many usable gigabytes does this project need? Bang, you've got the information you need to make an informed decision about that project. Of course, that's going to provide you with some efficiencies. There's also a component of reduced cost. Because you're utilizing the infrastructure more effectively, there's just an inherent improvement in the utilization. And the example I like to give is, if you're not buying more than you need, you're not powering more than you need, you're not cooling more than you need, you're not paying maintenance for more than you need. And again, your costs are aligned exactly with your usage. It's a very efficient model for you. And so if we look at that in a slightly different view, if we think about an organization, how the historical procurement process may have worked, some may have seen longer procurement cycles than others, depending on the structure of the organization. Costs were variable transaction to transaction based on list price changes, currency change, whatever might be impacting the purchase price or the purchase value. You'd have to deal with that each time, whether there's a formal RFQ, RFI, or RFX process, or whether it's just simply 3 bids and a buy. However you might be doing it, there's a prolonged process there. And so as each of the projects you see represented by the colored bars, the colored portion is what the requirements of that project are. The gray bar represents what might be the projected needs over the term of the contract or the term of the need, or it might be that growth projection plus a little bit of risk. A lot of organizations or a lot of projects that are brought to the business for approval will put a little bit of hedge in there to make sure that they don't have to go back for reapproval. That's key. And so for us, you can see how that would look like underutilized capacity. So if we flip that into a GreenLake solution, you can see how very quickly you've got the same projects all consuming what they need. Their costs are aligned exactly with their usage, but you see the large green box in the center there, which is that variable capacity I spoke about. So as each project is bursting into the variable capacity for their needs, you can clearly align those costs with that project's usage. You can start to see how much more efficient this model is. You don't have any of that underutilized capacity. The over-provisioning is virtually eliminated, but you're not impacting the business negatively because you have that variable capacity. So you can see there's a transparent cost model. You've got the capacity available ahead of need. You start to see the analytics kick in. You start to see how agile the business would be truly in that cloud operating model. And again, this infrastructure is installed in your data center or in a co-located environment. HPE is metering it, which is how we're able to create this solution for our customers.
Nice. So that was all about, I really like this, all about the enhancing operation, making it more efficient. This is what I think every customer is looking at. And another way to do that is also through managed service. At least this is what we believe at NOVIPRO. So on the screen now, you're seeing that that we do offer a full range of personalized services. And this is all sized based on the customer needs. So can really we see what we can do for you, whether it's managed it's infrastructure or managed services, including our SOC Security Operations Center. And we or a complete through our complete offering of AAS as a service offers, like backup as BAS, backup as a service, YAS, infrastructure as a service, DRAS, DR as a service, even SaaS, software as a service. So those are all offered as a service, and most of them can be offered through GreenLake or to support the GreenLake infrastructure that the customer would choose, and I really like the word tailored. Tailored.
Mhm.
I mean, our solution are really tailored for every business, whether it's a SMB, small and medium business, through the large enterprise. And we do have a customer from ranging from those, those two, through all the scale of from SMB to large enterprise, because we're able to tailor the services we're providing to them based on their real needs. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a key area for us, certainly in the Canadian marketplace in general.
Sure.
So I'm a part of a North American region, of course, and in the United States, we get to see generally they're about 18 months in front of us from a technology shift, just regardless of industry. Just in general, that's sort of what we see. But that's a much larger sort of enterprise space. What we've seen in Canada in the last 2 years in particular is the interest level is increasing for the Canadian marketplace with as a service. And it may be the cost controls, it could just be the overall cloud operating model in general. But to your point around tailoring, with NOVIPRO and HPE working with your clients, you can figure out what the solution needs to look like, whether it's just networking, just compute, just storage, a combination of the three. And I do like that word as well, tailoring, just making sure that it's an efficient model in general, but it's also very specific and precise for your customers' needs.
Exactly.
And speaking of customers, I do like to have this slide. I love it because this is a slide that's available globally for HPE to use. But one of the customers in this list, which is a referenceable customer, is Western Canada Lottery. And of course, that's a Canadian customer. It's an opportunity I was involved and happy to work on. But when you look at each one of these, and I highlight them only here today in name, but each one of these has a video reference. There's a case study for each one. So your customers can read and figure out how did these individual organizations take advantage of that as a service model. And in particular, how did they take advantage of GreenLake? If you look at the winery, it was really about all of the data that they're creating, similar to Auckland Transport. All of the data that they're generating from these edge locations, all of the insights they're gaining and the analytics they're gaining, they needed an infrastructure platform that adapted with the needs as that input and that data was increasing over time. They want to be able to make the right decisions, specifically in Auckland Transport. They're looking to make the right decisions based on efficiency and also security and safety for their transit users. For Western Canada Lottery, it was a lot about being able to have the next generation platform for them, which was compute and storage. They wanted the predictability of costs for sure, but they also wanted to have a solution that grew with their needs. As they were changing, their customers' needs were changing. They needed to adapt the platform to take advantage of what they were seeing in the shifts in the market as their customers were engaging with them differently. And so each one of these cases are available. You can query them on hpe.com, or we can have NOVIPRO help send out to you the specific links so you don't have to search around. You can get right to the video so you can hear directly from the customers what their experience has been with GreenLake. I think I'd say the last 18 months in particular, one of the key ingredients that we've been speaking about is sustainability. And it's really on two fronts. One is, of course, with a GreenLake solution that's as a service, purpose-built, and your costs are aligned with your usage, that also means your energy needs are aligned with your usage, and you're not paying for more or powering more or cooling more. So there's an inherent sustainability conversation, a very powerful conversation to be had there as to changing your operating model, again, in co-located or in your own data center, you can start to see how not only are you gaining financially from that, but you're also gaining in what your objectives might be for your sustainability targets. And so seeing how not only leveraging an as-a-service model can facilitate that, but also we have HPE Financial Services, which is a fantastic sort of secret sauce that we have, which is a way for customers as they're transitioning from a legacy environment into a new environment, a more sustainable, more efficient environment. They also want to know and understand that the infrastructure that they're getting rid of is being managed sustainably. There's a very good story from HPEFS regarding how much of the technology that's recycled, how the components are leveraged, and what the actual waste is. I think it's sub 3% now as far as what happens when the legacy technology is either repurposed, reused, or recycled. The other side is now customers are looking to do business with companies that have set their own very aggressive sustainability targets. And so at HPE, we are certainly associated with those aggressive targets. We've gone ahead and above and beyond. Most organizations are setting targets for 2040. We are now setting targets for 2030. We also have invested a lot in the IP and the understanding that we have around the low carbon technologies, the patents that we hold there, and also our social and sustainability programs within HPE. So I know that for a lot of your customers, Alain, this is a key area of focus going forward. They want to know not only are they procuring sustainable, focused products and solutions, that they're also doing business with sustainably focused organizations. So if we look outside our boundaries of HPE, through the evolution, as I mentioned, early days with flexible capacity, it was very infrastructure as a service, it was very HPE focused. But over time, we recognized, of course, the needs of our customers are changing and evolving such that there may be a need to include non-HPE components. So all of the solutions, the ISV providers that you see on the left-hand side of the screen are available within the GreenLake family. So what that means is we've negotiated agreements with each of them such that you can procure the licensing and the services and software from those organizations as a part of a GreenLake solution. And if you look at the right-hand side, the area that I would say is sort of most dynamic in Canada right now, and again to that sort of true hyperscale cloud experience, is customers are looking to get out of the data center business. We're seeing a massive increase in the momentum and enthusiasm around co-location. In Canada, we have Equinix and Digital Realty. In the United States, they also have Cirrus One as an option. But this is an area where I can tell you in the last kind of 18 months, we've seen an uptick as you're looking to create the co-location solution, and NOVIPRO's managed services, all wrapped around the HPE technology and services. You can see you're getting very close to that hyperscale experience in that co-located environment. And another area we're seeing some energy is around cloud adjacency, where customers who are looking to take advantage of the tools and the compute power in the hyperscale, but want to have it tucked up right against them inside a co-location provider. That's a solution that's definitely available from Digital Realty and Equinix, where you have your data in the control of your cage at an Equinix facility, but you're tucked up right against and leveraging the compute power. So you're maintaining more control over your data, eliminating potential ingress and egress charges that sometimes can be associated with your use of the hyperscale for the storage platform. So just some areas for your customers to consider as well. So if you look at this slide, it leads nicely into this slide, which I do appreciate as a bit of an eye chart. But what it speaks to is you take the IP that we've invested, our own R&D, mergers and acquisitions we've made, the partnerships we have with the ISVs, the partnership with NOVIPRO, you can start to see how now you can look at procuring very specific solutions. VDI as an example. I know with sort of figuring out where the balance is with remote work these days, organizations are looking at how to have a platform that's dynamic and grows, but now it's even looking at having a platform that's dynamic, grows, is fully managed, and is housed in a co-located environment. Now you can have all those components, the services, the software stack, the infrastructure, all wrapped up into that invoice where you're seeing your monthly usage and you're starting to see it grow over the term of the contract and your costs are predictable. And so for HPE, this is a bit of a brag slide, but this is where we're at. So this is a key differentiator for us. I know the competitive landscape has been changing, specifically kind of the last couple of years. Some of our competitors are coming to market with an as-a-service solution. We've been at this for quite some time. With that experience, of course, you can imagine what we've gained. But we've now got it to a point where, as I mentioned, the central focal point is that GreenLake cloud platform. We're going to continue to make investments in the services and solutions that are available on that platform and the value that it brings for our customers. But that value certainly wouldn't be possible without key partners such as NOVIPRO. So I just wanted to give you this slide, Alain, for you.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. Exactly. Why NOVIPRO? Why choose NOVIPRO with your HPE GreenLake solution? I mean, you've been talking, we've been seeing, and we've been hearing from you, Anthony, and we definitely understand the value that HPE GreenLake offer position and bring to customer. So why teaming with NOVIPRO to do that? Well, first, we offer bilingual expertise, something that is greatly and deeply appreciated here in Canada and mainly in the province of Quebec. As you know, we're mainly speaking French here, but there's also other folks in Canada speaking French as well. So we offer this bilingual expertise, which is really appreciated by our customer. We also have more than 30 years in the business of IT. So meaning we've acquired great expertise of the technologies and also in regard to project management. Our ecosystem of partner brings a lot of potential to our customer. Would it be, yeah, as you've seen, and you showed us the HPE ecosystem of partner that can be tied to within the GreenLake offering, and that was funny because most of those partners are also our partners. So I mean, yeah, you see the triangle where everyone speaks to each other. Makes sense to a customer to be there also. So also for the past few years, we've worked hard around security and compliance, something that that our customers will surely see benefits there. I was talking about the SOC 2 Type 2 control that we're having now. So this is one among many. And finally, our great expertise in multiple technology fields. With this expertise, we bring efficiency. Again, efficiency, a word that I like almost as much as the tailored one, and improve productivity to our customer, making this makes it possible for them to have their IT resources focus on relevant business project. So, I mean, hopefully I've translated the NOVIPRO the NOVIPRO service so that our customer and our attendee can understand what we're doing and how good we are at doing it.
Yeah, I think it's a key point to raise. It's that customer awareness, that knowledge that you bring, also the expertise that you've described, that really helps the core component of any as a service or cloud solutions going forward. As you find that balance between a hyperscale use, on-prem, co-location, what NOVIPRO brings is the understanding of the objective your customers are trying to achieve and helping to figure out which of the three areas makes the most sense to drive the most value, and not a predetermined outcome which is all on-prem or all hyperscale. Exactly. You're really able to work with your clients effectively to figure out what's the right mix, the right balance for them. I think it's an excellent proposition.
Exactly. So I think we're at the end of the presentation. I've seen some questions popping in during the presentation, and if I choose one here, so it's about supply chain issues that we've seen in the past. Well, during the pandemic, at the end of the pandemic also, and we're still seeing at some point in the past few years. So they're asking how does GreenLake mitigate the risk associated with those issues? And I've been having this conversation with a lot of customers, in fact. And you were talking about change requests when we're hitting a higher upper limit, and then you'll issue a change order. So can supply chain issues become a problem with GreenLake offering, or how does it deal with it?
Yeah, the key word that was used in the question is mitigate. Over the last 12, actually probably a little bit longer than that, maybe 2 years, with the the supply chain problems, they really started to sink in. There were some areas where components just simply weren't available, and that's where you saw the most stress, and the lead times really started to elongate. But what you can do, as you can see with a model where you have that variable capacity, you have that available, of course, to burst into for projects. You can still continue to utilize that environment effectively. But what you raised is key, which is the change request. And so because the change request process is predefined upfront in the negotiations of the core agreement with NOVIPRO, you can trigger a change request, and that change request can be initiated without issuing a purchase order. It's very efficient. You're just working with NOVIPRO to trigger it, and we can deliver the capacity ahead of the demand. And so it can help insulate from some supply chain challenges. It won't eliminate completely because there still are some pockets. Very rare now. In fact, we've seen quite an improvement across the board. In fact, we're back to, I think for our organization, we're back to pre-supply chain challenges, lead times. But it's not to say they won't happen again for any number of reasons we can all imagine. Exactly. But yeah, I think the key word is a GreenLake solution could certainly help mitigate the risks associated with those prolonged lead times.
Yeah. Another question I've seen is this a complete outsource of our IT environment? And I can take it. I can take this one, Anthony.
Certainly, yeah.
Well, in fact, it's really a partnership between NOVIPRO and HPE, and I mean, we've mentioned tailored, personalized, and it's all about that. I mean, we're to provide whatever outtasking customer would like to have, or a true managed service, and for the rest, whatever customer would like to keep doing, we'll leave it to them, and that's going to be reflected in the contract. Am I right, or when I'm saying this?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen RACI charts, of course, that are figuring out where that delineation point is. It's not a complete outsource. I know sometimes the marketing materials can get ahead of us with statements like, we manage it for you. It's really in partnership with NOVIPRO and your customers where we'd figure out where it makes the most sense. What I often see is right up to the hypervisor. And then it's a balance between what's NOVIPRO taking on, what's HPE taking on, but it's effectively eliminating all of the services and management right up to the hypervisor. Customers are taking on application management beyond. And again, sort of back to that first premise of really being able to focus on the business that is core to them, not so much keeping the lights on with the infrastructure. And so just finding that RACI chart balance is a key component of that upfront assessment.
Great. One last question is about the we do not have a huge infrastructure requirement, but this sounds like this is built for enterprise or larger clients.
Yeah, so in speaking that kind of that we'll say SMB marketplace, what we've seen over the last number of years is that increased interest level in it. And so what we'll often say is, I mean, you can start with HPE GreenLake as small as 4 servers, kind of 40 terabyte range, to put that into perspective for customers. So it's not, I know the example that I shared was a bit exaggerated with the multiple projects, but really that was just to help define and explain the GreenLake platform. But it can be very, very small, very efficient usage, the cloud operating model and the tools associated with the GreenLake platform. That's really starting to drive that interest level. So I think, well, what I'd say is, when you come to HPE, and certainly you come to NOVIPRO, the answer isn't always going to be GreenLake. I'm not going to tell you that every single situation is a GreenLake solution. There are some cases where there might be limited or no growth. It could be related to the size of the environment, but if there's limited or no growth over the term, we're certainly not going to force GreenLake into that situation. A traditional purchase very well make the most sense, or even as mentioned, a hyperscale solution, depending on what the outcome is you're trying to generate. But I think if one of your customers or more of your customers are considering GreenLake, I would strongly encourage them to reach out to NOVIPRO and ULA in particular, and to find out if it does make sense. Talk about the features and benefits aligned with the contractual components to see if it's a nice fit, but certainly not enterprise only anymore.
Yeah, I like that, an honest answer. I mean, it's not everything that is fit for everyone, but as you mentioned, I've seen and I've been doing sizing as with the smaller footprint, and I mean HCI in that term
Exactly.
is really, I mean, 4 server in a HCI cluster really makes sense, and it could definitely go through a HPE GreenLake offering.
Yep, absolutely. With predictable costs over the term, it's a really compelling feature, especially if there's no upfront capital purchase. Again, to that component of managing cash differently,
Yeah. And
customers
we're
have
hearing
choice.
more and more about that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I've been talking with customer, and cash flow is currently not a concern, but concern, and company are looking into making sure they keep a good cash flow. Also,
Absolutely.
where the financial climate right now is uncertain, so they want to keep cash flow, definitely. So go not having to pay upfront for a whole infrastructure for 5 year, and it makes sense. So
Absolutely.
I think that's it for today. So I want to thank everyone for attending this webinar with us today. In case you missed some information Anthony or I shared with you, don't worry, you'll receive an email and you have the option to replay this webinar at your convenience. So that's it for me. Thank you everyone. Thanks for attending, and I wish everyone a good day. Thank you, Anthony.
Great. Thank you. Nice talking with you, Alain.
Thanks. Bye-bye.